it really feels like everyone is kind of waiting for the next big thing, like the next big shift in tech or energy or whatever that just changes everything.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And with everyone talking about AI now and how much power it needs,
Right.
I think we might be at one of those moments.
Yeah, maybe a new kind of Sputnik moment.
Exactly, where we got to rethink energy completely.
Definitely. And that's where a company like Oklo gets really interesting.
Yeah, Oklo and their whole advanced nuclear thing.
Exactly. So for this deep dive, we're going to look at their FY 2024 shareholder letter
Okay.
and all the different stuff they reference in there
Right.
to get a clear picture of where they are now and where they want to go with nuclear.
Sounds good. So we'll be covering what they actually
Yeah.
did in 2024, who they're trying to sell this to,
Mhm.
especially in that whole data center market, which is just blowing up.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
And we'll dig into their tech and how they plan to make money,
Right.
plus all that stuff about fuel recycling, which is super interesting.
I agree. It's fascinating.
And even the move into radioisotopes.
Right. It's a lot to cover.
And of course, the whole regulatory landscape.
Yeah, how they're actually going to make all this happen.
And other financials, too.
Exactly. So basically all the key stuff without having to read through all the dense documents yourself.
Yeah, think of it as the SparkNotes version.
Uh-huh.
I like that.
Okay. So let's start with 2024.
Okay, sounds good.
What were some of the big things that jumped out at you, and what direction do you think Oklo is heading?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is they went public this year.
Right. That's a big deal.
It is. It opens a lot of doors for them in terms of funding and visibility.
Definitely puts them on a much bigger stage.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And beyond that, they're making real progress at their first commercial site.
Yeah, at INL.
Exactly. The Idaho National Laboratory.
Being at INL just feels significant for a nuclear company.
Yeah, it gives them a lot of credibility and access to resources and experts.
It's not just any old plot of land.
Right. It's being right in the heart of nuclear innovation. Okay, so they have this site, and they're talking about a customer pipeline of like 14 gigawatts.
Yeah, that's a massive number.
It is.
Makes them a real contender in this advanced nuclear space.
Yeah, suggests a lot of people are interested in what they're offering.
It does, but it's important to remember that a pipeline doesn't equal signed contracts. You know?
Yeah, it's potential.
It's potential. It'll be interesting to see how many of these actually turn into projects.
Right, that's a good point about separating potential from reality.
Exactly.
Now, this kind of interest probably isn't happening in a vacuum, right?
Oh, definitely not.
There's a lot more government support for nuclear energy these days.
For sure.
Like the White House is talking about unleashing American energy, and nuclear is a big part of that.
Yeah, they're seeing it as a key part of the clean energy mix.
Exactly.
And that kind of support can really help companies like Oklo.
And you can't ignore the AI boom and what that means for energy.
Oh, absolutely.
Goldman Sachs predicted data center power demand is going to jump by like 165% by 2030
Wow.
because of AI.
Yeah, that really puts things into perspective.
Yeah, it's not just a software thing.
Right, it's physical servers and data centers.
That need a ton of reliable, clean power.
Yeah, that's a huge market for anyone who can provide that.
And Oklo seems to be going right after that market. Like their deal with Equinix.
Right, that's a big one.
They even got a $25 million prepayment from Equinix for up to 500 megawatts of power over 20 years.
Wow.
That's their first big commercial deal in the data center space with advanced nuclear.
And that prepayment is a pretty big sign of confidence.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
It shows that Equinix is serious about this.
Yeah.
And they believe in Oklo's technology.
Especially in a sector that needs reliability like crazy.
Oh, absolutely. Data centers can't afford to go down.
Right.
So this is a big validation for Oklo.
Then there's the agreement with Switch.
Oh, yeah, that's a huge one.
12 gigawatts of power by 2044.
That's massive.
It is the CEO of SwitchX. Rob Roy even said they're committed to advanced nuclear at a transformative scale.
Yeah, he sees it as a key part of their future.
What does an agreement like that even mean in practical terms?
Well, first of all, it means Oklo has a potentially huge customer for the long term.
Right, like an anchor customer.
Exactly. And it also shows that big energy users are looking beyond traditional power sources.
Yeah, they're looking for something that can keep up with their growth and their decarbonization goals.
Right, exactly. But it's also important to note that 2044 is a long way off.
True.
Things could change a lot between now and then.
So it's a huge opportunity, but also a long game. And it's not just these big companies either.
Right, they have other agreements too.
Yeah, they have LOIs with Prometheus Hyperscale for 100 megawatts and Time and Back Energy for 50 megawatts.
So they're getting interest from all sorts of energy users.
Exactly. So we see the interest and some potential big customers.
Yep.
So now let's dig into what makes Oklo different.
Okay, let's do it.
What is it about their tech and their strategy that sets them apart?
So Oklo is all about fast reactors. Now, most nuclear reactors use what are called thermal neutrons, which are slower moving neutrons to cause fission.
Okay.
Fast reactors use
Fast me.
haha, exactly, fast neutrons, which are much higher energy.
So what does that mean in practical terms?
Well, one of the big things is scalability.
Okay.
They can design these powerhouses that deliver anywhere from 15 to 75 megawatts each.
So like different sizes.
Yeah, exactly. And that shift to focusing on 75 megawatts is interesting.
Yeah, why do you think that is?
Probably because of those data center demands.
Oh, right.
Data centers need a lot of power.
Yeah.
So by going bigger with each unit,
Hmm.
they can meet that demand more efficiently.
Like using bigger building blocks.
Exactly. And this modularity is a key difference between Oklo and those big traditional nuclear plants.
So what are some of the advantages of that modular approach?
Well, they talk about several advantages in their letter.
Okay.
First of all, it's scalable.
Right, like you were saying.
Yeah, you can add capacity incrementally.
Like snapping Legos together.
Exactly. And they also claim it can be super reliable.
Okay, how so?
They say over 99% reliable because if one unit goes down for maintenance...
The others can pick up the slack.
Right, exactly. And it also gives you a lot of flexibility in how you deploy it.
Yeah, you're not tied to one massive project timeline.
Exactly. You can phase it in as your needs grow.
That phased deployment seems really valuable in a lot of industries.
I think so.
Okay, so we've got modularity and scalability.
Yeah.
What about their business model? How does that work?
So their goal is to reduce the need for expensive grid connections and stuff
Okay.
by putting these powerhouses right at the customer's site.
So like a data center could have its own little nuclear power plant right there?
Yeah, potentially. And they're not just selling the technology. They want to build, own, and operate these facilities.
So they're basically the power company.
Exactly. They make money by selling the power directly to the customer.
Interesting.
They think this can lower costs, speed things up, and reduce risk for everyone involved.
Okay, I see. So instead of a data center company having to build and manage a nuclear plant themselves.
Which is a huge undertaking.
Right.
They just buy the power from Oklo.
Like a traditional utility.
Yeah, but with a much more localized and potentially cleaner source.
Makes sense. And this could open up different ways to finance projects too.
Exactly. It's a very different model than the traditional nuclear industry.
They even use that data center example to illustrate it.
Yeah, they talk about starting with 250 megawatts, then going to 500 megawatts.
Then eventually over 1,000 megawatts.
Yeah, exactly. All powered by these modular units.
Yeah, it's a really clear way to show how this could work.
Definitely.
Okay, so we've covered their progress, their potential customers, their technology, and their business model. Now let's talk about fuel.
Okay.
Oklo is really pushing this idea of nuclear fuel recycling.
Oh, yeah, that's a big part of their story.
What's the strategy there?
Basically, they want to take what we now call spent nuclear fuel or nuclear waste and reprocess it. Turn it into a new sustainable domestic energy source.
So like using what we thought was garbage to make more power.
Exactly. It's a pretty radical idea.
And the numbers they cite are crazy.
I know. They say there's like 94,000 metric tons of used nuclear fuel just sitting in the U.S.
Which is equal to 1.2 trillion barrels of oil in terms of energy.
That's a mind-boggling amount.
It is hard to even visualize.
They try to help you visualize it by saying, imagine a football field
Okay.
stacked 10 yards high with this used fuel.
Wow.
That's how much we're talking about.
That's insane.
It is.
So how do Oklo's fast reactors actually use this recycled fuel?
Well, their reactors are designed to be fuel flexible.
Okay.
They can run on either fresh, high-assay, low-enriched uranium,
Or HALEU.
right? Or this recycled nuclear fuel.
So they have options.
Exactly, and that gives them a lot of flexibility and potential cost advantages.
They say using recycled fuel could cut their fuel costs by up to 80%.
80%? That's huge.
Yes.
If they can actually pull it off.
All right, is this recycling technology proven? Like, can they actually do it at scale?
That's the big question.
Yeah.
They've done some successful demonstrations,
Okay.
but scaling it up to a commercial level is a whole other challenge.
So the 80% cost reduction is a big if.
It is. It relies on them figuring out the recycling and getting through all the regulatory hurdles.
Right.
But if they can do it, it's a game changer.
It would be.
A massive competitive advantage.
They're also working with Lightbridge Corporation on this, right?
Yeah, they signed an MOU to explore co-locating fuel fabrication facilities
Okay.
and working together on advanced recycling
So
technologies.
teaming up to make this happen.
Exactly, and sharing expertise.
Makes sense.
They're also building their own fuel fabrication facility at INL.
Oh, right. The Aurora Fuel Fabrication Facility.
That's it, and they've gotten some key approvals from the Department of Energy for that.
Like what kind of approvals?
Well, they got the okay for their safety design strategy and the conceptual safety design report.
Okay.
And this is interesting.
They say they're the only company right now that's actually secured fuel for their first commercial power plant.
Wow, so they're ahead of the game on that.
Yeah, in a field where fuel can be a real bottleneck.
That's a big deal.
It is.
Okay, so we've covered a lot.
We have.
Progress customers, tech fuel.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what about their acquisition of Atomic Alchemy?
Yeah.
Why did they do that?
Well, this gets them into the radioisotope market,
Oh, right.
which is facing a global shortage.
There's a BBC report about that recently, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And radioisotopes are used in all sorts of things.
Okay.
So it's a way for Oklo to diversify their business.
Leverage their nuclear expertise in a new area?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And potentially tap into a new revenue stream.
Makes sense. So what exactly does Atomic Alchemy do?
They're doing some really interesting stuff.
Okay.
They have 4 main areas of focus.
All right.
First, they're developing ways to produce all sorts of radioisotopes using a custom reactor they're designing.
For medical industrial research, all sorts of applications.
So like making these isotopes from scratch.
Exactly.
Okay, what's the second area?
Second, they're figuring out how to recover valuable stuff from waste streams,
Oh.
like old medical equipment or uranium mining byproducts.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so instead of just throwing that stuff away...
They can extract valuable isotopes from it.
Exactly, it's pretty clever.
It is.
Third, they want to use the byproducts from Oklo's own fuel recycling.
Oh, so it all ties together.
Yeah, they're trying to create this closed-loop system.
Reduce waste and make more useful stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
And the fourth area?
The fourth one is more experimental.
Okay.
They want to use fast reactors to produce new isotopes.
Isotopes that we haven't even made before.
Potentially.
Yeah.
That's wild.
It is, and those could have applications we haven't even thought of yet.
So where are all these radioisotopes used exactly?
Well, in space exploration, they can power deep space missions and satellites.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because they can provide power for a really long time. So like for missions to Mars or beyond.
Exactly. And in healthcare, they're used in medical imaging diagnostics and all sorts of cancer therapies.
Okay.
In defense, they can power unmanned systems, like drones.
Makes sense.
And this is interesting.
Yeah.
They can even be used in making computer chips.
Really? How so?
For something called silicon doping.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's pretty high-tech stuff.
So basically, they're used in a ton of different fields.
Exactly, from everyday stuff to cutting-edge tech.
Oklo thinks they can start making money from this as early as 2026.
That's what they're saying.
And they mentioned supplying companies like Xeno Power.
Yeah, so they're already making connections in the industry.
So this isn't just a side project for them.
It seems like they're serious about making this a real part of their business.
Okay, so let's shift gears back to their main goal.
Okay.
Deploying these power plants.
Right. How are they doing on that front?
Yeah, what kind of progress are they making with actually building these things and getting through all the regulations?
Well, at their INL site, they've gotten some key approvals from the DOE.
Okay, like what?
They got a site use permit and an environmental compliance permit.
So they're clear to start working on the site.
Yeah, and they've started drilling testing and doing site characterization.
Okay.
Their goal is to have commercial power by the end of 2027 or early 2028.
That's ambitious.
It is, nuclear projects are notoriously complex and time-consuming.
What do you think are some of the biggest challenges they're facing?
Well, licensing is always a big hurdle.
Yeah.
Getting all the necessary permits and approvals can take a long time.
And with nuclear, there's extra scrutiny.
Definitely. And then there's the whole supply chain.
Right, getting all the specialized parts and materials they need.
Exactly. And finding skilled workers.
It's a lot to manage.
It is.
Okay, so speaking of regulation, Oklo wants to submit a custom combined license application, or a KLA, to the NRC in 2025.
Yeah, that's their plan.
Can you explain what a KLA is and why the custom part matters?
So a QLA is basically a one-stop shop application. You submit it to the NRC, and it covers both construction and operation of the plant.
So instead of getting separate licenses.
Right. It's supposed to be faster and more efficient.
Okay.
Now, the custom part means they're not using a pre-approved standard design.
Okay.
They're proposing something unique to their specific reactor and their business model.
So it's tailored to how they want to do things.
Exactly.
That could be faster if the NRC is cool with it.
Yeah, if they like what they see.
But it also means there's no precedent.
Right. They're kind of charting their own course.
So it's a risk, but potentially a big reward.
Exactly.
They're also arguing that this whole approach, the integrated business model and the custom COLA, could be a faster way to get licensed than the traditional Part 50 and Part 52 processes.
Yeah, that's their argument.
Can you quickly explain those other processes for context?
So traditionally, you might go through Part 50 for a construction permit, then a separate Part 52 process for an operating license.
Okay.
Part 52 also has options for getting an early site permit or a standardized design certified,
Okay.
which can make things easier down the line.
So Oklo is trying to bypass all that.
In a way, yeah. Their custom CLA is designed to cover everything for their specific design and site.
Streamlining the whole thing.
Exactly. And it seems like the regulatory landscape is shifting a bit to be more supportive of advanced nuclear.
Yeah, they mentioned the NRC might reduce their hourly fees for advanced reactor applicants.
Starting in late 2025.
Right, which aligns with that Advance Act.
Exactly.
What's the significance of that fee reduction?
Well, it's a concrete way to lower the cost of getting licensed.
Which is huge for companies like Oklo.
It is, because the licensing process is expensive.
Yeah.
So anything that can reduce that burden is helpful.
They also talked about ongoing pre-application engagement with the NRC and moving towards a pre-application readiness assessment.
Yeah, that's a key part of the process.
How does that involve?
So the pre-application phase is basically a chance to talk to the NRC informally
Okay.
before you formally submit your application.
So you can iron out any issues beforehand.
Exactly. You can present your design, answer questions, try to address any concerns they might have.
So it's like a test run.
In a way, yeah.
Okay, so let's move on to the corporate side of things.
Sounds good.
There have been some notable developments with Oklo's structure and personnel.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
What are some of the key changes?
Well, one big thing was their merger with Altsy Acquisition Corporation.
Right, that closed in 2024.
Yeah, and that gave them a lot of cash. $276 million after fees.
That's a serious infusion of capital.
It is.
Gives them a lot of resources to execute their plan.
Definitely. And they've also added some new board members.
Oh, yeah? Who were they?
So in March of 2025, they appointed Daniel B. Poneman and Michael Thompson.
Okay.
Poneman has a ton of experience in the U.S. nuclear industry.
Like what kind of experience?
He's held high-level government roles and stuff.
So he knows the ins and outs of nuclear policy.
Yeah, and Thompson has a background in tech investing.
Okay.
So he brings that financial expertise.
It's like they're adding the pieces they need to really scale up.
It seems that way.
And this was after Chris Wright left to become the U.S. Secretary of Energy.
Right.
He was a big proponent of nuclear even before taking that job.
Yeah, he was talking about a nuclear renaissance.
Yeah, so his departure is interesting.
Definitely.
Okay, finally, let's touch on the financials.
Okay.
What are the key numbers from 2024?
Well, they reported a loss from operations of $52.8 million.
Okay.
But that includes $12.5 million in non-cash stock-based compensation.
So if you take that out.
Their adjusted operating loss was $40.3 million,
Okay.
which was within their expectations.
All right, and what about their net loss?
That was $73.6 million for the year.
Okay, and what drove that?
Well, it includes the operating loss plus changes in the fair value of some financial instruments and some tax expenses,
Okay.
partially offset by interest income.
All right, so what about their cash flow and overall financial position?
So they used $38.4 million in operating activities during the year. But importantly, they ended 2024 with $275.3 million in cash and marketable securities.
Okay, so they still have a decent war chest.
Yeah, and they said they're going to use that money to deploy their first Aurora powerhouse at INL and to keep working on their fuel recycling stuff
Okay.
and to fund Atomic Alchemy.
So basically, all their key initiatives.
Exactly.
Okay, so to sum it all up, Oklo has had a busy year.
They have.
Lots of progress. Lots of developments.
What's your overall take on where they stand?
I think they're showing some real momentum.
Yeah, I agree.
They're not just talking.
Right, they're actually making things happen.
They're getting customer agreements. They're hitting regulatory milestones. They're moving into new areas like fuel recycling and radioisotopes.
Yeah, they're thinking long term.
Exactly, and they're focused on this idea of modularity and scalability,
Which is a big deal.
especially with the growing demand for clean, reliable power from data centers and AI.
Right, those are massive markets.
They are,
Yeah.
and the government is becoming more supportive of nuclear.
definitely, which helps a lot.
So yeah, I think Oklo is well positioned to be a leader in this next generation of nuclear energy.
I think so, too.
It's an exciting time to be watching this space.
It is for sure.
So for you, the listener,
Mm-hmm.
think about this.
Okay.
Beyond data centers, what other industries could really benefit from this kind of modular, rapidly deployable nuclear power?
Yeah, that's a good question.
And if we can actually turn spent nuclear fuel into a resource,
Mm-hmm.
what does that mean for energy independence and sustainability in the long run?
That's a big one.
It is.
Well, lots to think about there.
It's like we're on the verge of a whole new era of energy.
Potentially, yeah.
So if you're interested in learning more about Oklo and all this stuff,
Definitely check out their shareholder letter.
yeah, we'll put a link in the show notes.
And they have links to a bunch of other articles and reports in there, too.
Yep, so go explore and see what you think.
It's a fascinating topic,
It is.
for sure.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
My pleasure.
Always good to chat with you.
Likewise.